This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is Spencer Drate. Spencer has designed for 26 Rock Hall inductees. He's in MoMA AIGA, Lou Reed NYPL, and Rock and Roll archival collections. He co-hosts 2 interview shows. One is called Inde Café 2, and the other is Interviews Down Under. He's an author, and he's been nominated for GRAMMY and National Design Award. It's a pleasure to have you on, Spencer.
It's great to be on your show. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I always enjoy talking to you. You know, you and I had met 2 or 3 years ago. We happened to be at a very cool place in New York City called the Cutting Room, and we were there to see a show. We were there to see Phil Fett, and it was a great show. And, you know, we have a lot of common friends, so I thought, wow, this is just great. I've learned so much from you in the last couple of years. You just have a wealth of knowledge, so I just needed to bring you back on. This is my second interview with you. So I want to go back to the beginning of time with you and to find out where your creative energy started.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was very lucky. I had a Yale faculty background teaching design, so that goes along with the great schools like Rhode Island School of Design and Cooper Union. The basis is Joseph Albers, the famous painter. But that schooling of design and learning about typography and design and color too, learning all different facets of design was a very big thing in my life, and that catapulted me literally into my life and connecting with certain famous people, musicians, and other people, and just packaging really nice stuff. And I've gotten a lot of design awards, and my partner now, since 1982, Judith Salovitz, both of us are in the Rock Hall collection. And the thing about that, Kathy, is that, listen to this, we're the only designers to have our own archival collection within the archive collection of the Rock Hall, which is quite an honor. And we've just won a lot of awards together. But my career started a long time ago, and it came out of the woodwork. I started book designing, and then all of a sudden I go away and come back into New York, and I'm walking down the street looking for a job, and this guy with a 3-piece suit walks up to me, and I didn't really know who he was, and he knew me, and it turned out he went to my college and knew I did design. And he says to me, Spencer, he says, he knew I did design. I don't know how he knew that, but then he said, I need a type person exactly where I'm at, you know. And I said, fine. And he said, well, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm handling all of the Apple Records trade ads accounts, and I'm working on the Imagine album for John Lennon. You ready for that? So I did the first job I ever did was a print in music, was a print ad working with him for John Lennon's Imagine album, which is probably the biggest album he ever did. And then later in life, I worked for. I starts off with ESP Disc, which was this very funky jazz label who had very famous first albums of famous people, and I designed for Pharoah Sanders and Bob James, and then it went, you know, and other people I repackaged for that label, and then they left, and then I got thrown into one of the big labels. That's a great story. Where I'm waiting online at a theater, and this guy is an usher, and I start talking to him. We start talking to each other, and he says, "Well, his name is Stephen Taylor. I don't know who he is." He says, "Well, I need a type guy. Another one. I need a type guy." And so I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I didn't know who he was." He says, "I'm doing Richard Hell and the Voidoids, Blank Generation, which happens to be one of the biggest punk albums that ever was." I didn't know that, and then I got in there and I worked on that. And the art director, John Gillespie, said, "I tell you what, I can't promise you anything." He liked the package that I worked on. He says, "Well, I'll throw you into the Ramones, I'll throw you into Talking Heads, Pretenders, whatever I got. Can't promise you anything." But so I ended up working for all of them, and they all loved my design. And so that was a big catapult, because I was working on, like, for the Ramones, End of the Century, Road to Ruin, and Talking Heads, co-designed 45s and Fear of Music, which was Grammy nominated for the best album package in 1979. That was big. And, and the Pretenders 45 and Dead Boys 45 and da-da-da goes on and on with Sire. That really started my career. And when Sire went, I went to a different venue. I didn't work for them. I was thrown into big names like Bon Jovi's first album, Billy Squier, Don't Say No, multi-platinum album. I worked for Chris Blackwell at Island, so I was working on U2 Octoon Baby and USA packaging, and so on and so forth, and quite a lineup, in my life. But I was really lucky, Kathy. Things came to me, and it seemed like I didn't have to show my portfolio after a while. It's very bizarre. But, I lucked out, and I'm being blessed, and now we're in, myself and Judith, both of us are in a great collections, and we're being respected. And we got our show on Interviews Down Under right now, formerly Inde Café too, where we interview a lot of famous people, and we do interviews for the Rock Hall archives also. That's a big thing. So anyway, I don't know, I'm showing my life in a nutshell, but we've had great stuff happen to us, like the Howell Gallery did a big show on our life in New York. It was a packed house, and it was all about all the album covers they worked on and stories and stuff like that. And I can go on and on. I mean,
Oh, sure. But I mean, I want to go back a little bit because, you did have a lot of like strikes of luck, running
yeah,
into these people and having like the common ground with them and
yeah,
understanding the type of work that you were doing. So just
yeah,
for our younger audience, when you talk of typography, right? You were basically doing a lot of the font work, the print work, the lettering, the type, all of that that was on the album covers.
Well, we
So,
were doing a combination too. It wasn't only that. We would do. I mean, there were instances where I just did the typography, or just I would do, and then there were instances we do the whole cover. In other words, the visual part of it, which is very important, plus the type. So it varied. Like Billy Squier, we worked on the visuality, hired a photographer, and did the type. Same with John Bon Jovi. Hired a photographer, did the visuals with that. But like with Talking Heads, they really were a great designers to work with. And I ended up doing the typography part of their thing. The Ramones photographs or artwork, like John Holmstrom would give it to me, or Mick Rock photographs, and then I did the typography. So it varied. It really varied in my life, different ways. But I got to tell you something you brought up. Typography is the most important thing. It really is. And most designers, I was talking to a great designer I'm interviewing, and he agreed, it's like most people cannot do really good typography. They really don't. Most people are really not good at typography. But the ones that are stars and are great, and I got to say we're really good at what we do, and you can tell by our work, is the typography area. And that's very important. And young people to learn about is that study typography, and it's a big part of what you do. And that makes or breaks anything, because there have been things that are great visualization things, but the type is terrible. That's a lot of stuff like that, and that's not good. You've got to have a combination of the visualization good with the typography good. But that's a lesson, and of course, it brings in color also. You got to learn about color. When you do things, how color works,
well, I
and
can give,
that was
yeah, well, I can give you a lot of compliment and a lot of respect because when I was designing my second book, I had the
oh
artwork
yeah,
done, by
yeah, that was
Tony
really good. Yeah,
Squindo, but actually, that was all done. And then I had consulted with you and I
right,
said, I
sure,
really need to have the title written. And the one album that I
yeah.
still have on vinyl is an album that you had done for Frankie and the Knockouts. And I,
Oh yeah,
I
below the
pulled,
belt.
yeah, so I pulled the album out and I was looking at it while I had you on the phone. And I'm like, tell me, the font that you used for this album because I want to tell this to Tony so that he can,
Right.
and I sent it all to you. You looked at the coloring,
Yeah.
you told me exactly how it should be or where it should be on the,
That's true. Setup, right?
and you made a lot of good points because I wasn't thinking of it, and,
That's okay.
it was really important, especially since the person that wrote the forward to my book and my last name are almost exactly the same name, one letter different. And
Right.
when you said using, the color of the font, I wasn't thinking of it. But the A and the E needed to be very, very clear so people knew that we weren't, related or the same person or that kind of a thing.
Right.
So you opened my eyes with a lot of that, and I
Oh,
really
thank you.
appreciated it.
Oh, that's really great. And it's a really good logo too. It turns out to be really good.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I wanted to go back because there's a couple of really great stories that a lot of people talk to you about. One is the Bon Jovi story. Another is the Joan Jett story. So those are the album covers that, seem to have a lot of conversation. So if you can just give us kind of your point of view or how it was meeting the artists and working with the artists and all of that.
Let's start with Bon Jovi. So that was my friend Arthur Mann who signed Cinderella and John Bon Jovi to Polygram. So I get a call and he said, "You and Judith, how about working on that?" And I said, "Fine." I didn't know who he was, the whole thing. Walks into our office with a cassette of Runaway, right? And of course Judith has great ears and she hears it. And then John walks out after our first meeting and she says to me, "He's going to sell 1,000,000." And I go, "Yeah, right." Okay. I'm being honest about this. I didn't think it had that thing. It had that rinky dink, "She's a little runaway, da 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 da." Stuff that I couldn't relate to it. And the story with that is really interesting. Of course, it was a monster, and the album turned out to be a monster. We hired Jeffrey Thomas, who worked on Billy Squier, and he did that cover, which was a wraparound photo. It's a great photograph. It wraps around. The 45 is a beautiful picture he did. And that worked out really great. John loved our work. We did a logo, which is on, the logo is on Living on the Prayer video, by the way, on the stage. On the stage.
Yes, the video. And it's so big. It's literally when the camera shoots the angle, John is running across the stage right over the logo, which is really, really cool.
He got the long he's flying in the air with the long jacket, right? It's like, and the logo is all over. So I always tell people, you want to see our logo? See the video. It's like, but that was, John was really nice. He used to come up to the office, and Justin, Judith's son, was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 at that point. He played around with him. He was a very nice person. And the thing I liked about John was, I'll tell you very strong about that. He was very dedicated to his girlfriend, who he married, and he wasn't like this, and he was a stud, a good-looking guy like Guns N' Roses Axl was at that time, and Axl was crazy. But John never had anything. He wasn't in the newspaper with bad stuff like Axl would be. You know what I mean? He was like a very dedicated to his girlfriend. He didn't screw around. I like that about him. That is very unusual, but he was like that, a very good person. I always remember that. What was the other, Joan Jett? Was that
Yes,
the
the
other
other story is the Joan Jett story about,
Okay, so the Joan Jett story is really interesting. So Joan, that goes way back. I got to tell you, we did the famous Jump Shot album. You see the front cover. That's a great album cover. I mean, it's like a Springsteen knockout type cover. It's one of the great rock covers. And you're right. I mean, that album cover is one of the greatest. The shot is unreal by Dieter Zill in Germany, and it's just her with a yellow background. And we decided not just put a shrink wrap with clear sticker, so you ripped off the sticker and the shrink wrap, you're left with the photograph. It's a gorgeous cover. But going back was very interesting. I had just finished Bon Jovi on Polygram, and they asked me to do, this is where this comes in, they asked me to do Lita Ford's cover. And I said, wow, it's Lita Ford's first cover, which was not bad, by the way. After that, just kind of dived off. But that first album was very good. And so a couple of days later, I get a call from Kenny Laguna, Joan Jett's manager. And he says, I hear that you're doing Lita Ford's cover. And listen to this. This is all he said. Joan does not get along with Lita. I hung up the phone and I said to myself, what he's saying to me is this. He's not promising me anything. But what he's saying is, don't do Lita's cover or you won't even get to the door of doing Joan. You know what I'm saying again? And so I said to myself, what am I going to do? And people were telling me, you do Polygram because that's your new client, which would be normal, right? And they're going to give you more work. And you were, but I had a big thing with Joan. I mean, Judith and I did the Jump Shot cover, and she was so nice to us and bought us a speaker system. I don't know. She bought everybody a speaker. She was, so, and on the stage, I really, she perspired. She really gave to the audience. You know, she wasn't walking around like the other one. And I said, there was something inside of me that is the stupidest decision, but it ended up not to be. I dumped Lita Ford's album, not even being promised anything from Kenny. And that's because of Joan. I felt so strong with Joan that this impulse in my heart, I couldn't do that cover. Is that amazing? So what happens is this. Kenny and Merrill, her manager, comes back to me and gives me 5 album covers to do for her, for me and Judith. Are you ready for that? Plus all the other, like the logo for Blackheart and the stationery and everything. And so you learn something. It's like you go with your gut feeling sometimes and things just work out, you know what I'm saying? But never happened to me again. And I probably wouldn't know how to deal with it again, but I dealt with it for some reason the right way. And again, I wasn't promised anything from Kenny. He just said, don't work on it because they'd had, at that time, later they became friends. But you know what I'm saying? So that was a great story.
Yeah.
And that cover is a great cover. It's a lot of photographs. People go to it because of the front cover, the Jump with the yellow background and the great shot. And it's a classic. And what really makes it is no type on the front that we wanted, because that's what makes that stark cover. I remember that Peter Seville designed Peter Gabriel's So album, which was a big album, but they did a run of the album with just the photograph in black and white of Peter Gabriel without even the letter So on it. And that's like that, where you have picture only, see. And that's rare, by the way. Usually it doesn't even happen. But those are 2 instances with 2 album covers are very dynamic and just a photograph. But that's a big album. We ended up doing a Pure and Simple album. Glorious Results in a Misspent Youth is a great album with a great back cover by a racing car, a picture of the group, a great photograph by Chris Callis on the back cover. Gorgeous, gorgeous photograph. And we worked on great stuff. They loved our stuff. And 45s also. And it was just a great partnership with Joan. And then, later, the other great partnership was with Sylvia Reed. Judith and I worked with Sylvia Reed on the Lou Reed albums and the Velvet 93 tour. So Magic and Loss, a New York album, and those are in the Lou Reed NYPL archives, and also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archive collection. Also, those are dynamic albums, Lou Reed and Magic and Loss, and the 1993 Velvet Underground live tour package. But, it's like these packages I'm talking about are really great graphics. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they really are, for people to see.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to go back to another album that you had told me a story about, which was really interesting. The Billy Squier album. There was a certain way that you made the cover. There was a processing or something. So
Well,
a lot of people don't know that story.
Well, let's go back to Foreigner. Foreigner did an album with a girl in a bathtub and a color Xerox. It was very raw, right? And I always remember that cover for some reason. It's a dynamic album cover. I forgot the name of it, but it's a picture of a girl in a bathtub. She's almost like nude, but not really. But it's a raw photograph, and they converted to a color Xerox, and it gave the feeling of rawness. So going back, Billy Squier's album, when they called me up at, I think, midnight, Mitch Tannenbaum calls me up and says, you got to come over to Capitol. This is like midnight. to listen to the tape. And I said, oh, but those songs were unreal. You know, the whole album was just out of the box. There was no question that album, there's no question it was going to sell mint, and it did. But going back to do the designing for it, I was thinking it needs a raw feel because Ryan, the big secret to that was Billy wanted Brian May to produce it, but Brian was too busy, so he said, you got to use Reinhold Mack, the other producer. So Billy uses Reinhold Mack, but with Reinhold Mack bringing what I'm doing in the design together was he made an album for Billy in sound, which he never did before, and by the way, not after. He brought in a raw guitar sound, and that's on every song. And that rawness reminded me of the Foreigner album. I said, to bring rawness is, I'm going to get Jeffrey Thomas, who did Bon Jovi. He threw, literally, we had to do this, by the way, we had to do this album in like 48 hours. Unbelievable, right? Gets the photographer, he takes Billy down to the bathroom, shoots him with a guitar, and that photograph I converted to a color Xerox to get the raw feel, use typewriter type, if you see it, and it's a very raw-looking album cover. And that's the feeling that we wanted to portray in that cover, you know, but it was the album sound that is carried through in the pic. Now, you see a lot of albums, this is another good point, a lot of albums don't convey the feeling of the album, but that album, you get the feeling in the graphics, the rawness of the type, the rawness of the color Xerox. Like I'm saying, the Foreigner album, because Foreigner was a very raw
Yes.
group, you know, right too.
So just to go,
So, I mean,
just to go back over the Foreigner album, I think you're referencing the album called Head Games, and it's
that's it.
actually yeah, it's actually a girl in kind of a skimpy halter top. She's
Right,
her backside is leaning against the latrine like a urinal,
right,
and she's holding herself up on the wall. So it looks like she's kind of in a definite bathroom position. Yeah.
right. But that's, yeah, and it's like, I'm glad you're bringing that up. I mean, that is, you know, you remember things as a designer. I mean, I always told designers, this is a good thing we're talking about, is to look at other people's work and you learn from seeing other people's work, and it's what you do with it. You don't want to really copy it, but you may want to use it. All designers do that. They look at other designers. They use things. You know, I mean, I'll tell you a classic. Judith did in the Bon Jovi cover a diamond in between Bon and Jovi. If you see the front cover. Now, you know what they did after that? They used the diamond. They might have changed the type, but they used her diamond. You know what I'm saying? So people use other things, but it's how you do it. It's how you use it. You know what I mean? And it's like you have to look at other people's work. I mean, that's the whole thing of as a designer. I respect other album cover designers. So I look at their work. I mean, it's a great ones, unbelievable amounts. And we've interviewed it. Like Sagmeister, Stefan Sagmeister is unbelievable album cover designer. He had a short career. His work is unbelievable. We interviewed him for the Rock Hall Archives. We interviewed Jerry Hayden, another one. Just won the Bird Project for a Grammy that I judged actually, and Dynamic. She did Madonna, a lot of famous Van Halen, you know. And we've
Yeah.
interviewed Paula Scher is another one. It goes down the line. Hugh Brown, who did the Ramon and a whole bunch of things.
Oh, yeah.
We've interviewed great
Well,
designers, but you learn from these designers. Myself, I learned from their work. You look at them. It's like going to a museum. You know, it's like you want to see other things and get inspired. So, you know, it goes into your head, right? And
that's
you
right.
never know. And you never know. You might need that thing, and that's what happened with Foreigner and Billy. You know.
Well, the piece of it that I love is because I love that 70s band, Frankie and the Knockouts.
Yeah.
And the piece of it that I love is that they were really a 70s band. And,
Right.
believe
Right.
it or not, their album covers look very 70s as well. So,
Yeah.
I like that when you look at something, you almost feel like it's a time capsule.
Yeah. I mean, that album Below the Bell is interesting because you're bringing it up is because it's a lot of color. The front cover, they're both illustrations, front and back, and they're beautiful illustrations on the front and back. So that was nice to work with because you have these elements that are really beautiful, and the color is beautiful. The art, the illustration is beautiful on both sides. You know what I mean? So that's another thing. And that's basically illustration working with typography, you know.
Yes. Well, one of the thrills that I had in the past year is you and I recently went down. I don't know, it must have been 6 months ago or less. We were at Generation Records in the Village, and
Oh yeah, yeah,
we were there for a CBGB a gathering because they were doing putting they did a book about CBGB, and they were talking about the life with the bands traveling through Hilly's Place and the storytelling, and Chris Franz was there from the Talking Heads, but it was
right,
pretty
Chris,
amazing because you and I got there a little earlier than the big crowd.
right,
And to
that's
walk
right.
around there with you, looking at, massive, 45s and, all the albums and, just when you were just, pulling one up or pulling two up and
Yeah.
literally listening to you, seeing how you commented on the coloring. It's literally like only you could tell those stories. Only you could explain why, you think
Yeah.
they did it that way. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't even know
Well,
where
well,
to
you know, you
start.
bring up a point. That place also, besides having an event, it had a vinyl. You know, this all through the store, vinyl. And we're bringing into something that's interesting is that vinyl is very big right now. So that you know, I judge the Making Vinyl event, which is founded by Brian Eckes and my friend Larry Chaffee, and they do a great job every year. They go all over the world, and it's all about vinyl. And Jack White was a guest speaker one year, and C.V. Van Zandt, and it's all about vinyl. And why I'm bringing this in is because the place we're at is a very big vinyl store, and vinyl is huge now. You know, it's really huge. And Judith and I judged the Making Vinyl event in the past years, and the packaging is unbelievable. By the way, it's not just we're talking about intricate packaging, really intricate packaging, and beautiful. You know, so vinyl is back. That's the other thing I want to bring in that we're talking about in some way because that store we were at is big in vinyl, you know, and I'm a big 45 collector, by the way. So I did books. I did
Yes,
two books.
yes. Talk about the
Two books.
45 book that you did
Well, the
because
45 are a monster, and those are great stories because the first book called 45 RPM was in a long time ago, but it's the beginning of the vinyl thinking about Surge. And that book, believe it or not, was turned down. I thought it was going to be easy because everybody's doing LP books, right? And I'm doing the first 45 visual history book. And you figure, well, that's no brainer. There are great sleeves. You know, you got everybody. You got David Bowie, you got the Rolling Stones, you got the Beatles, you got name a person, you got Madonna, whatever. It's a visual book, and it's going to sell because it's 45 and no one had done it yet. Well, guess what? You wouldn't believe this. All the publishers turn it down. They turn it down. And I said to myself, I can't do this. So I went to the last publisher called Princeton Architectural Press. It was small in New York, but they did visionary books. David Byrne, Paula Scher, things like that. And they got the book. And what happens? The first year, without any promotion, sold 10,000. And after that, it built up worldwide to 25,000. So therefore, now I'm going several years later with Judith, and we're going to do another book. But this time, what happens is, you know, the publishers are so stupid. They say they're going to do the book. They want to do the book. Why they want to do the book? Because we sold 22,500. I'm sure they don't even think about the concept. You know what I mean? That's what they turned down. So the publishers that we approached wanted the book. Of course they wanted because it sold 22,500. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, it gets done by HarperCollins, Harper Design, and they actually worked on the book with us, and they did a great job. And the book was very different. It's called 545s, and that book, basically, as you go through it, it's different. It's like the layout is different of the book. It's like left to right. So every page from left to right goes with each other. It's a very hard thing to do, by the way. And there's tons of great various 45 sleeves, varying from the famous ones that we all know to ones that you won't see. The indie guys are in a lot of indie in there, which is really great, and they have great sleeves, and it covers different areas of different record labels and just you know, very. It wasn't to be done, by the way, famous songs or famous album. Our viewpoint was just the graphics. That's the viewpoint of this visual book, or both of them, was the graphics of the sleeves. That's it. But it falls into the categories of famous people anyway, because you've got like Talking Heads. You know, you got those sleeves are beautiful. You've got, you know, things like that. So it, Rolling Stones, right? The Beatles. So you fall into those big names anyway. But that wasn't, see, but that wasn't the concept of the book. The book concept is the visuals. And that's the most, so you got a lot of groups that you may not have heard about, but they're incredible. A lot of indie groups, for instance, with great sleeves. And that's what's in that book. And it's owned by many, many famous music people. This book, 540 books.
And that book is still available. I think isn't it
Yeah, you
still?
can go on
It's
Amazon.
Amazon. Yep, sure.
Yeah. I buy the book on Amazon. It's cheap for me to buy. I buy, you know, it's funny. I could buy a used copy, and it's not written in. It's mint condition. I get it for cheap. You know what I mean? If I need a copy, you know, I go to. In fact, I just got one for Judith. She needs a copy. I had to buy one. But you know what I mean? Yeah, you go on
Yeah.
Amazon. You get.
But
Yeah,
you must have over 25 books on Amazon. I mean, you just put in your name, and I think you have like 25 books on Amazon. You have quite a.
21. We've done 21.
Oh, wow.
That's the number. 21 pop culture books in various areas. And motorcycle books, and rock poster books.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the motorcycle books because those seem to be very different.
Yeah, they sold out really good. There's a book called The Art of the Bobber that Judith designs, gorgeous. And the way we approached that book was very interesting. And movie poster books, that's the other big one. Oh my God, movie poster books, two of them. But let's go into those two because those are very interesting. The motorcycle book we did. My friend Alex Mardikian was working at Von Dutch, which is a very big motorcycle firm, you know. And we got on the phone, and I said, Alex, what's happening with motorcycles? He says, well, the big thing now is the bobber bike, because those are thin tire bikes, and they're beautiful. I never liked the fat tire bikes, right, which is big. You know, I couldn't stand fat tire bike. I always liked the thin tire bike. Anyway, so that's what that's all about. It's the era of the thin tire. And it goes back to World War II to modern. And apparently a lot of the motorcycle builders, famous, were building these bikes. So that's what the book's about. It's called The Art of the Bobber. And it's sold out, by the way. Completely sold out. And the motorcyclists that are in there just bought tons of those books for their motorcycle events, right? But that book's gorgeous, and Judith designed it. And the way we approached the book is also interesting. We didn't do it like the other motorcycle books that kind of dumb. They're just pictures with text. I said to myself, I got motorcycle magazines. And what do the motorcycle magazines have in it? All of them have, next to the pictures of the bikes, they got the list of everything that is needed to build a bike. And that's what the motorcyclists want to see. But you know what? The other motorcycle books don't do that. They only have pictures of bikes with text. And I said to them, you know what? In every bike that we show, we've got to show the components of that bike. That's going to be a big, and that was in the motorcycle magazines. And you know what? That's something we did which was smart, because that was the big thing that sold the book. It wasn't just the pictures and the text. It was what is needed to build that bike, all the components, which, like I said, was in motorcycle magazines. But why didn't the other motorcycle? Thank God they didn't do it. We did it, though. And it's a gorgeous, by the way, Judith did a fantastic job on the design, if you see that book. And it just sold out. So that's one of those books. I've got to talk about the film movie poster books. It's such a big part of life, the culture of movie posters. The two books that we did were, and we did the first book. I walked in one day in the office. I said, we got to do a movie poster book. And Judith says, Inde. I said, wow, no one ever did Inde movie poster history visualization book on movie posters. No one. Can you imagine? That book got sold right away. Abrams wanted to get that book, Abrams book. And so we did it. Gorgeous, paperback, still available, beautiful book. You should get it. And it's the only book on Inde movies, movie posters. And it's the whole history with visuals and profiles of certain directors of Inde. It goes down the line, and it's a gorgeous book. And the other one was Chronicle, and that's a big book. That's 1,500, listen to this, 1,500 posters, 16 countries. And David Kerr from the New York Times, film critic, wrote beautiful text. And what we did with that book, we didn't do it like the other movie poster books. We didn't have the movie posters with the text. We did comparison posters in it. We also did write-ups in every country with a famous artist of a movie poster that's very famous, like Saul Bass for the United States, for instance. A famous poster artist in Poland, Japan, wherever. We did a profile like that. And then we did comparison posters. So we take a poster like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, for instance, the Clint Eastwood book. And it showed what it looked like with different countries, a comparison thing, period. So we did a very cool type of concept text content thing for the book. Plus, you've got 1,500 gorgeous posters from, I've got to advertise, Poster at Toddy Gallery in New York. If you want movie posters, you go there. They sell to the famous people, Coppola, Brad Pitt, everybody. They sell to all those people. And gorgeous posters. So that book is big. That's 1,500. And Chronicle books. So those two books are really, but we did a rock poster book series, a two book series for Abrams on rock. It's called Swag Rock Posters of the 90s and Swag Rock Posters of the 90s and beyond. Two great rock posters books. We had a rock poster show at the CBGB Gallery with Hilly Crystal. We had a big show there. That was a great show. And, I don't know, we're going through the whole thing here, but I also did, I'll tell you what, I did write-ups on special CD packaging, and Judith and I did a phenomenal show in New York in 1996 on just special CD packaging. These were CDs that the record company would spend a lot of money on at that time in the late 80s and 90s and special packaging. And we mean over-the-top materials, graphics, everything. And we did a whole show on it in New York, and it's a mob scene. I was interviewed on MTV and Smithsonian Magazine, which to me is interviewed in Smithsonian or in the history of the world, right, Kathy?
Yes, yeah.
So that was a big show. And then Cooper Hewitt Museum, which is right near where we had it, the One Club, the curator comes down. She hears about it. She goes crazy. She said, wait a minute, you're doing this incredible show. We got to have some of these pieces for the Cooper Hewitt show. So they took some of the pieces for that show. That was an incredible show. No one ever do it. I used to do articles in special CD packaging. We decided to do a show. It was monster, But, things like that in our life are very interesting. Judith and I always pick things that no one else does. And they're usually great things that people should know about, And so,
well, you bring up a good point, because just this past weekend I was driving to Boston and I said, oh, I have a couple of CDs in the car. One of them was an older CD that was either in one of those, bins that you get when the library is giving things away. And that was from it has to be like the 90s, and it was heavy duty. It was plastic. You opened it up, the CD sat in it really low. You had to kind of pop it out. And then the other CD I bought recently at a show, and it was just a sleeve. It was made of paper. It was hard paper, but it was just a sleeve, nothing fancy, And I was like, wow, I was looking at it, and it was like the difference of 20, 25 years, with these two CDs, It was kind of interesting.
Well, you brought up a good point, because in the article in Smithsonian, which they had the picture of a lot of our packaging and our photographs at the One Club, the special CD, they interviewed a number of art directors. I was one of them. Jerry Hayden, who I interviewed on the Rock Hall, she was another one, and there's a couple others. But anyway, the point was, it was about the packaging of CDs and how he hated the jewel box. Really bad, because plastic would fall apart, and it's disoriented in the graphics. That you have a booklet, you have a disc. It's like it doesn't go together. But the thing that came out that AGI actually started was it was like a book. You open it up like a book, the way the packaging was done. It's like it's like opening a book, hardcover paper. You could bring the graphics, therefore, from the front to the back like an album cover. And if you go inside, you could bring the graphics again from the left to the right, and then you have the disc. So you had more of a continuity thing. Plus, it was firm. It's not plastic. It doesn't fall apart. It's hard paper.
Yes, and they
So
used to
that's
put the lyrics in some of those, right?
oh yeah, yeah, sure. But I'm just saying, that was a big talk for a long time about that, the packaging, and everybody hated the plastic. I mean, still today. I mean, plastic just falls apart. I mean, forget about it. But those little book things, the way tons of people did it, that is, it's firm. It keeps forever. It doesn't break. It's not. It's paper. It's hard paper board. So I mean, things that way. I always promote telling people when you're designing, don't do jewel box. I always tell them do that because customers like it too. The people buying it because they keep it. They won't have a breakage with that thing. And I got to tell you, I saw. Me. I'm in the business of as a GRAMMY judge and stuff like that. So I get stuff a lot of stuff is just junk. I mean, they don't know how to package things. You know what I mean? The disc
Yes.
falls out, for instance.
Yeah.
The disc falls out. You open it up, the disc falls out on the floor. See the plastic stuff's the worst. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was a
I
whole
wanted to
discussion about
ask you a question because
it. Yeah.
you would be the person to ask. Throughout time, you might think maybe 30 years, 40 years, maybe 50 years ago, what was the album covers that you would say really stuck out in your mind? Like, was there any kind of like controversy on album covers where they were banned or they weren't allowed to release them?
Well, I've got to tell you, we did an album cover called Victory. This brings out a very strong point which we did, and Friends of the Scorpions, right? And David Krebs was the manager and he wanted me to design it with Judas. So I said, fine. Okay, so what the album cover is in description, Jeffrey Thomas again does the shot, and it's like a Helmut Newton-esque type shot. The cover's in black and white. It's gorgeous. All it is a girl looking at her from, I don't know how you describe this. Her legs are stretched out in a V, like victory, right? And her hair is hung down, right, in the front. And her arm is stretched out, okay? And then I put the type across the top, the word victory, letter space, in kind of like a Led Zeppelin typeface, right? So it's a hard metal group, right? And so it says rock and roll, right? I mean, it's a guy thing, you know what I mean? Really, it's not like women. I mean, but it's rock and roll. It's a great cover, and I got to tell you, this cover, I'm going to bring in what you're talking about. Is that every magazine from Japan to Germany, anything we're interviewed in, wanted this cover in the article. Everyone. And what made this cover, it was controversial. And we're going to bring in something you're talking about. They didn't want to print it. CBS did not want to print this cover. That's how risque it was for them. But it's a gorgeous cover, though, if you see it. But they ended up printing it, and they ended up selling it. But it ended up being a cover that what you're talking about was censored in a way. It was almost not going to be printed. How do you like that one? So it was,
Yeah.
but
So,
there are covers. If you go back in the history, I mean, there's definitely the whipped cream covers on the girl body. You get into that stuff. You get, very laudy type covers that were done. I mean,
but also I
controversial.
remember, like when you mentioned how the albums were, with cellophane over them, but there would be, kind of like warnings, like stickers put on them about the lyrics or. I
Oh yeah,
remember a
that's
lot of
easy. Okay,
that because it
metal.
was in the 1980s. Do you remember that? I think there was like a big political movement about like what kids were listening to and all of that, So,
Well, yeah, I mean, you had, for instance, the metal stuff was really big on that, with the stickers on it, the heavy metal stuff, right? Then you got hip hop, same thing, hip hop. You got the stickers on it. I mean, that was, part of the action, but,
yeah, they definitely had to put warnings on some of this stuff. But
yeah.
in your experience, did anyone try to make an album cover that was not wasn't normal material? So like you're talking about using like print work,
Oh, yeah,
you know.
let me get into that. Okay, so I'll give you two really good examples. The Lou Reed metal box for Magic and Lost is a limited edition metal box with print, like, it's gorgeous. It's like the picture, it's the Magic and Lost picture by Louis Jamais in black, printed on a silver, like metal box, the size of a CD, same, gorgeous. It done in metal, and the story with that's really great because they did it in Germany, and it was so expensive they didn't want to do it in the United States. But because Germany did it, Sylvia told me the story. She said she didn't want to call me up because there was a point where they weren't going to do it, and then I would have died. But she called me up. She said, "Well, you know what? They ended up doing it because Germany did it, and they wanted to be embarrassed, so they ended up printing it." That limited edition, it's only what they call pro only, promotional only, wasn't sold at all. But people could buy it in the store. They always had in the back of the store you could buy it, but it wasn't commercial. Gorgeous package. And the second one is the velvet limited edition with the peel off bananas, like color form idea, on a styrofoam, like a plastic type material package. But the peel off bananas, and the sticker comes off with the title and their name. That's a gorgeous limited edition, the 1993 tour. So those are two examples of special materials that were done that cost a lot, by the way. One's limited edition, one was pro only, but spent money.
Were they the same band had done that, or two different bands?
No, you got the Velvet Underground with the colorful.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
But at that time, like I'm saying with our show that we did, a special CD packaging show in New York, that some of those pieces were in the Cooper Hewitt, that show was all about that. That was a show that just showed special materials and limited edition runs of special things, graphics, and that's away from the normal, the commercial. And so that's all about that, what we're talking about. And,
so
we were lucky to do those too. I mean, a lot of people didn't have a chance to even work with special material. I mean, you know what's amazing? Metallica, group has a fortune. They never did a metal box like Lou Reed. Now you think a group like Metallica would do a metal box? No, they never did. I mean, there's certain things and you think certain groups would do, you know what I mean? But that's one of my funny points is that they never even saw the vision of doing a metal. I mean, they have all this money, you know.
Yeah. So where can the audience find these interviews? Your Inde Café and
you go. It's easy. You go on the internet and just search out Inde Café with a number 2, and interviews done on there. It's all on YouTube, all of them. And then on Facebook, I've got a site called Inde Café 2, where you can see all the interviews up to date. And then the other site is Interviews Down Under on Facebook, a site which you can see all the interviews also. So those are the different places. But you can go right on YouTube and just search it out. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, great. So that's great.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I guess it was 2 years ago, you had an exhibit at the New York Public Library, and it was Lou Reed, and it was his whole collection, his poetry. That was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. That are Lou Reed covers and the velvet packages in that collection because it's part of the archives. And when they announced the archives originally, that opening we're invited to, and they had our New York album in a display case. It was really incredible. But that show is unreal. I mean, it's all about. It's Laurie Anderson who was a big part of that with the Lou Reed's archives, and it's about collection, which they still do, collecting Lou Reed artifacts, and it varies from music that no one's ever heard about, tapes that he had. Judith and I just went to the Lou Reed birthday party, by the way, at Lincoln Center this past Saturday, and it's all about playing from the tapes Lou Reed songs that no one's ever heard about, right? You imagine this on video that Lou Reed did or he was on that no one ever saw before. That's in the archives, and the show had a same feeling. It had videos and even the album covers. It was like an incredible show of pictures, and you were there. It was just an amazing show, and they did it for a number of at least 6 months. That show was up, and it was an amazing show, right? And wish they had it again, but they don't.
Yeah,
but that was a great show. Yeah, that was like you got.
So that's great. So we have YouTube, we have your Facebook page. What are the other resources that people can reach out and find your work? Amazon?
What we're talking about that you brought up, actually, Amazon. You can go on Amazon and the books. So there's 20. I don't think I have all 21 books. I got a lot of them. So you search out Spencer Drate or Judith Salavet's books, boom, on the internet, and you search out and you go, zoom, right away, but they have a lot of our books in there. Basically, otherwise we're on a lot of interviews. We've been interviewed a lot ourselves, so there's a lot of interviews of us in different ways. And we've also put interviews together for YouTube, which are amazing. Like we did, it's called the Vinyl Cover Show, 12-inch and 7-inch, and it's just like a 12-minute visualization of cover LP and 45 only covers that are fantastic design. That's it. Not the group name. It's fantastic design. That's a great visual thing you can find on YouTube. It's called The Art of the Vinyl Cover Show, 12-inch and 7-inch. And that's a great, it's only 12 minutes, but it's got music in the background, but the music by The Cure, The Forest, there's some music in the background. And it's just a visual, I don't know, ecstasy, maybe I call it, of seeing gorgeous LP covers and 45 covers. That's a good, and then we did a series, a 10-episode series on best packaging for LPs, 45s, and special CD packaging. And that's another thing that we did on there, which is incredible to learn. These are all like learning tool things, literally.
That's incredible.
And by the way, I didn't bring this up, but Judith and I are going to do a master class on designing for music packaging, which we're in the works right now, and we want to go to some art colleges with that. That's one of the things we're in the process of doing.
Wow.
And so what you're talking about teaching.
Very exciting. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on, Spencer. We have a lot of material now to go and research you and find out more about your wonderful, amazing career. I have never looked at an album cover the same after I've met you. So I have to say thank you again. Thank you. You're really a treasure.
Having me on. Oh,
yes,
listen,
you really are.
To be on your show.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you again, Spencer.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Rock and roll.
You have been listening to Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium, Dream Central Station, LLC. My audio editor is Al Hemberger at the Loft Recording Studios in Bronxville, New York. This is WNEW 102.7 FM radio.